God emphasized the physical beauty of Eve to the point where Adam fell because of her physicality. But that's a shallow thing. Why make Eve so beautiful if God didn't care about physical beauty? You see, so it is through extreme beauty that sin came into the world. Satan himself was also very beautiful. As a matter of fact, in the book of Ezekiel, God even said about Satan, your heart became proud on account of your beauty, and you corrupted your wisdom because of your splendor. Again, beauty. So I threw you to the earth, and I made you a spectacle before kings. So not only did Adam sin because of extreme beauty, but Satan himself also sinned because of extreme beauty. And the angels in heaven who came and slept with the daughters of men also sinned because of extreme beauty, because of the extreme beauty of women. This is how strong and potent the Almighty crowned such a shallow thing as beauty. If God did not care about looks, then why make all the angels extremely attractive? Now, angels, when I say angels being attractive and handsome, Christians need to remember or know that angels are not seraphim. A cherubim is not an angel. A seraphim is not an angel. Angel means messenger of God. So anyone that is sent, whether on earth or in the heavens, by God on a mission, is by definition an anglos of Elohim. But the angels are made a little higher than men. So they are not the cherubim and they are not the seraphim. So angels look like men, but are much more glorious and can manifest as men. That's why they can procreate with the daughters of men, because they are pretty much men, but in the heavens. That's why, as Paul said, angels are made a little higher than men. But that's a different video. If God did not care about looks, why did he make all the angels extremely attractive? Why speak on the beauty of Satan before he became the liar and slanderer and deceiver? And even now that he is Satan, he still looks as he looks, extremely beautiful and handsome, and looks just as much as an angel of light would look like, because he still is what he was created to look like. If God did not care about looks, why make physical beauty the main attraction by which his purpose of procreation is carried out? Why not let attraction be by some other means? Why not let attraction be by something other than shallowness? Why did he make the world so that physical beauty is what makes a person attractive and not their inner beauty? God's purpose for humanity is to procreate. Why did he make the world in such a way that in order for people to find each other attractive and want to mate with each other and want to procreate with each other, in order to fulfill God's purpose for them, why did God make the prerequisite for that based off of something shallow, physical beauty? So I ask again, why did God make the world so that physical beauty is what makes a person attractive and not their inner beauty? Isn't that what you would call kind of shallow? And don't give me that nonsense about, oh, it's the inner person that matters. And no, we all know it's not that. Okay. Procreation is the means by which we fulfill our purpose here on earth. So if that is one of the biggest reasons why we as humans are here on earth, what does it say about God's view on physical beauty if it's through physical beauty that purpose of procreation is strongly realized? In the animal kingdom, mates can be chosen by dance, singing, gifts are even given. If you don't understand what I'm saying, in the animal kingdom, there are some birds that in order for them to choose a mating partner, well, it's always a female that chooses. In order for the female to choose a mating partner, the male has to do something that makes them attractive to the female, and the female will choose based on which one does what they're doing the best. In some animal kingdoms, for example, the bird, it's about how well they sing, and that's what makes them attractive to the female. Others is about how well they dance. Believe it or not, believe it or not, this is what goes on in the Amazonian rainforest. A lot of these creatures have weird mating rituals. Some of the birds, they give gifts, and based on the value of the gift or based on how wonderful the gift is, that's what will make the female choose. So the reason why I mentioned this is God could have made humanity in the same way, in the same vein. He could have made it so that it is not the physical beauty so much that makes a person want to mate with another person, but it's what? It's how they dance, it's how they sing, it's the gifts that they give. You catch my drift? So, but no, God chose to make physicality something very shallow, your beauty. God chose to make that the dominant reason through which people fulfill his purpose of filling the earth with humans, procreation. In the human race, the race made in God's very own image, it is through beauty, a very shallow thing, that God has made the attractive factor for mating. So now you see how we can see from the things that God himself has made, namely the human race, that God cares that much about physical appearance. Again, I ask you, isn't that a shallow thing? And being beautiful in appearance has a lot to do with physical health and being healthy in general. Why would God make health and physical beauty so closely interconnected if he didn't care about the physicality of a person and the physical beauty of a person? If he made health and physical beauty so closely interconnected. And since the Old Testament laws were mostly about the need to be pristinely physically clean, because Jehovah is a very holy God, and so therefore we too must be holy and perfect before him. This means that God wants us to be clean so that we can be ultimately healthy, and therefore ultimately so that we can be beautiful, and therefore ultimately so that we can find each other attractive, opposite sex obviously, mate with each other and procreate and fill the earth with other beautiful humans. This is a shallow thing. To give you some insight, but before I continue on this point, the Old Testament, how much it valued physical cleanliness. There were specific laws about how you should bathe yourself, how you should wash your clothing, like in Leviticus chapter 15, verse 4 through 27. There were instructions about how to use the bathroom, where to use the bathroom to relieve yourself, what you should do after it is done. This is found in Deuteronomy chapter 23. There are laws about diseases and quarantining someone. If someone has an infectious disease, how they will be unclean for 7 days, so on and so forth, outside the camp, and they will not be allowed to come back in. These laws were far ahead of its time. And this is in Leviticus chapter 14, for example, if you want to specifically verse 8 through 9. Also, there are laws in Leviticus chapter 5 that talks about how you should handle a dead body. But at a time where there are no microscopes and science hadn't advanced at that point in time, how is this particular nation, this small group of people, so ahead of their time in sanitary views, in sanitation? But the whole point of God giving them these laws was so that they would be so pristine that other nations will see them and want to imitate them, and thereby, through the nation of Israel, God will be glorified. So now, if it's through their cleanliness and ultimately through their physical health and beauty that God will be glorified, wouldn't God be glorified if we, as his people today, maintain our physical health and therefore our physical beauty? God cares very much about our physical appearance. Since the Old Testament laws were mostly all about the need to be pristinely physically clean, this means that God wants us to be clean so that ultimately we'll be healthy, and therefore ultimately we will be beautiful. Because by not being physically clean, it can and will lead to a whole bunch of other physical problems that, believe it or not, will affect our genome and corrupt us. Toxins, harmful environments, pollutants, exposing yourself to waste products, not properly exposing of waste products. All of these things can cause harm and defects in the body, which ultimately lessens a person's health and thereby affects their appearance in a negative way. We all know this. We're at a point in time where science has made us privy to these things, that it ultimately boils down to physical cleanliness. Whether you believe it or not, that's what has impacted the human race and caused some to look disgusting in appearance. Look at those who do drugs, for example. They've ruined their health because of it. How do you think God feels about them? People who do cocaine and how they look so disgusting and sick. How do you think the Almighty views them because of what drugs have led them to look like? Drugs is an unclean thing. It negatively impacts their health and thereby negatively impacting how they look. They look disgusting. God does not want his creatures looking like that. Yes, it's a shallow thing to care about how a person looks physically, but it's an indication of what's going on deep inside their genetic material, which God sees all these things. Everything is openly exposed and naked before the eyes of the Almighty. It all starts with a lack of cleanliness. Doing drugs is an act of an act of uncleanliness. And so now, if this is how God feels about a person who is on the opposite end of the spectrum, as in does drugs and thereby affecting their health negatively, and thereby affecting their physical appearance negatively, and thereby affecting the clothes that they choose to wear, looking like a bum and dirty, right? And stinks. And obviously will not wear jewelry, will not put on perfume or cologne to smell good. If this is how we know God will feel about that person, right? Because inwardly and shallowly, they are unattractive on both spectrums, on both fronts. Then how would God feel about the opposite front, where a guy cares about his health, or a woman cares about her health, does not do drugs, or eating healthy, having good health, and they take care of their body, and so they look good physically. They're in shape to the point where people envy them because they look so good. They brush their teeth properly. They shower. They put on cologne or perfume. They wear nice clothing because they have self-respect. They have their pride. And they wear jewelry because now they look pristine. It looks good. And with all of this physicality, they praise God. They worship God. How do you think that makes God look? How does this not glorify God if this person is doing all of this, but at the same time professing their faith in God, professing their knowledge of God, boasting in God? You see them with the jewelry, they smell good. Every time you see them, they look like so well put together every single time you see them. But then you also know that they are associated with the Almighty. They have a nice car. They take care of their car. They're always clean. Their shoes are always clean. Their beard is always good. The woman, her hair is always well put together. They always smell good. They always have on jewelry, earrings, piercing in good, modest places. They wear their chains, but they profess their faith in the Almighty. They look good, smell good. They're healthy physically. They're pristine. How does this not give glory to the Almighty? Someone who puts that much emphasis in their physical appearance, but they also make sure that their relationship with the Almighty is pristine. How does this not glorify God? How does a poor man glorify God more than a rich man who also glorifies God? When the Bible says to focus on the inner person, it's not saying to forsake the outer person. Because if you take care of both the outer person and the inner person, well, the one who takes care of both glorifies God double time. Whereas the person who only focuses on the inner person, well, then it'll only be God who sees that inwardly the person is beautiful. But externally, no one will really glorify God on account of that person, because physically there's nothing noteworthy about them to glorify God for. You understand? So on the physical front, it's very important to keep ourselves pristine on the physical front, because God sees it and he cares about it, obviously, because he made the world that way. But also human to human interaction, they also care about it too. That's why when Samuel, the prophet, was growing up, it said that he found favor in the eyes of God and in the eyes of men. Why would the Bible mention that if what humans perceive you as didn't matter? What does it matter if Samuel found favor in the eyes of men? If God didn't care about how other humans viewed a certain person? God does care because it glorifies God. When other people sees a certain person physically, because they can't see them internally, when a person sees someone physically and they're like, man, this guy's always well put together. He always has the nice chains, got the earring on. His beard is always clean. His teeth is white. You know what I mean? Her hair is always combed. She always smells nice. She's not ratchet. She's not hood. She eats healthy. You could tell she cares about her physical health. Inwardly, she must be beautiful, because if she's doing all of this externally and she's always praising God, no, well, of course she's inwardly. We have no doubt inwardly she must be a good person. This glorifies God. This glorifies the Almighty. And we already know God cares about the physical beauty too. But I should have clarified in my last video on this subject, which I made. God himself is not shallow. I hope you understood that. God himself is not shallow. And he doesn't see us in a shallow way only, I should emphasize. He sees us in a shallow way, but it is not the only way he sees us. He sees us shallowly, but he also sees us inwardly because he cares about the inner person. Right? We already know that God cares about the inner person. However, God views both the inner person, or you can say inner beauty, as well as the outer beauty. Believe it or not, physicality matters a lot to God. Again, it gives us an insight what's going on internally with the person. Not always, but that's how it was supposed to be, if you really think about it. Otherwise, why give us a dietary restriction? What other purpose would that serve? A dietary restriction. What other purpose would that serve? If not for us to look presentable and to be clean and beautiful. Therefore, he isn't giving us laws just to bother us. God is not burdensome. Ultimately, my last video, that's what I meant when I said that God can be shallow. Not he himself, but shallow in how he views humanity. Even though he also sees the inner person, he cares very much about the outer appearance of a person. Why do you think he chose Saul to be the very first king of Israel? Saul was physically the tallest man in Israel by far. The account says that from his shoulders upward, he was taller than everyone else in Israel. So it wasn't even close. Okay. This is a very shallow picking of the Almighty. Saul was also the most handsome in all of Israel. So physically, he was pristine. And anyone who becomes king in Israel is a representative of the Almighty because they are sitting on his throne. That's what the Bible says. It says that David sat on the throne of Jehovah. Solomon also sat on the throne of Jehovah. But I made a video on this. Obviously, they're not sitting on the exact throne of God, but it's just a physical expression. They're representing God by being kings over his people on Israel. But when God chose Saul, even though God chose Saul from a shallow point of view, inwardly, Saul was corrupt. But God gave Saul the chance to change, but Saul was just corrupt that much. So what did God do? God chose another handsome person, but was also handsome on the inside, David. But in both scenarios, both pickings by God were handsome men. So this is another shallow picking of God, except he also cares about the inner person, but he also cares about the outer person, is the point I'm trying to make. Which is why in the Old Testament, he said that specific persons, individuals could not enter into the temple to perform services before him. And these restrictions was all about physical appearance. If they had a disease, if they had a crushed testicle, if they were lame, if they were missing an eye, if they were missing a tooth, all of these things are physical things, physical defects. And God, him caring about a physical, it doesn't matter if the person's inner beauty is pristine. God didn't say, well, if they have a missing eye, but their inner person is beautiful, I choose this person to represent me in the temple. No. Because God cares very much about the physical appearance of a man. But if a person's health is defective, it will also show in their physical appearance. And God would also not want that person either. So we, for our part, should aim to please God on both fronts, inner beauty and outer beauty. And my brother, who the reason why I'm making this video, who asked the question, he also said, So you're saying as a Christian, it's a good thing to be stylish and in great shape. And this is my reply to that. Yes, as a Christian, it is a good thing to be stylish and in great shape. Why? Because through our physical beauty, we glorify God. When an artwork is beautiful, it glorifies the maker of that artwork. When an artwork is beautiful, it glorifies the maker of that artwork. When something is beautiful, it glorifies the one who made it beautiful. When I was younger and I would go to my meetings, my congregations, Bible meetings, it would be me and maybe like two other young people in the congregation. And when it would come time to like go preaching, the young ones would never be there. It would only be me. And a lot of times during the meetings too, even when we weren't going preaching, a lot of times the young ones would not be there. And it would always bother me because, I'll give you, I'll tell you two things. It would always bother me because I feel like I should mention this one first. I always wanted to be attractive. Why? For the sake of glorifying God. When I would go preaching, and I would notice that it would only be old women that would accompany me, or old men, or people who were like, out of shape, and it would really, really irritate me inside. And I wished to God to be very, very attractive because I love him as much as I do. And I don't want to be just another person who is not attractive, who is using their youth to serve him and glorify him. No, I want to be extremely attractive, extremely healthy, and young, so that when people see me going out preaching, the good news and preaching about the kingdom, they would say to themselves, first of all, they would think about God because I'm holding the Bible. They would see me, I'm healthy, young, beautiful, and this will indirectly glorify God. And I wanted this so much, and I would be so upset that no other young ones would join me in glorifying God in this way. It will always be old people, and it would irritate me. So whenever I remember Franco was like, "Oh man, Hermano, I saw this one beautiful young woman preaching, the other day," and I was like, "Thank God, finally, that I love hearing things like that, because I always understood that beauty glorifies God, especially when that beauty is glorifying God. You know what I mean? Is vocalizing, is expressing their love for God. I always loved that. So now let me get back to the point. When an artwork is beautiful, it glorifies the maker of that artwork. When something is beautiful, it glorifies the one who made it beautiful. How much more so if that artwork could speak about its maker and glorify its maker while that artwork maintains its beauty and integrity. To me, that is a beautiful thing. It's a wonderful thing. And I know no one can tell me otherwise. I know this is what the Almighty ultimately wants. I know this as a fact, because he does care about physical appearance, because it glorifies him. If something is disgusting, how can that glorify God? In what way? In what way? And if you're beautiful, but you're disgusting inside, that's also bad. My point that I'm trying to make is not that when a person is physically attractive and inwardly unattractive, that it's a good thing. No. Or that God likes that. No. My point is that God cares about the inner beauty as well as the physical beauty. However, the physical beauty is what you see first. And he created the world in a way where, in order for his purpose to be realized, which is for humans to procreate with each other and fill the earth with other humans, in order for that purpose to be realized, it would need to start with physical attraction. He made it that way. He didn't have to make it that way. He could have made it in a way where it's about how you dance or about the gifts you give, like the examples I gave in the beginning. He could have made it literally about inner beauty. You don't think God can make you don't think God can make attraction based off of inner beauty and not physical beauty, something shallow? But no, he chose to make it something shallow. So God cares about this shallow thing, about physical beauty. That's the point that I'm trying to make. So now with that clarity, hopefully the previous video that I made about, the positive side of a shallow world. I'll post a link of that video under the description. I'll probably put the thumbnail on the screen. Now, that video that I made, when you watch it now, you would understand again. And so I basically defend God's case in that video also. There's another aspect that I also want to touch on. If you were an artist and you made something and it was pristine, and someone came along and did anything that would taint your artwork or spoil your artwork, just a little bit, put a little smudge on your artwork, even slightly, how would you feel? Mind you, you made it pristine, glistening, shining, no defects whatsoever, not even one. And then someone came along and just put a little scratch on it. Right? Now, how would you feel? The more pride you have in your handiwork, in your artwork, the greater and higher your anger and frustration would be, no matter how small the defect that was put on that piece of artwork. But now let me turn your mind to this real quick. Suppose that artwork was a human and you put so much love into making that human, and it is the epitome of all the works you have made, and you made it good and perfect and pristine, not one defect in it. And remember what I said, the more pride you have in your handiwork, the greater and higher your anger and frustration would be if even just the slightest defect came upon it, because you're a perfectionist in the work that you do. So you've made this pristine human. Now imagine that human could do damage to itself simply by not obeying your commands. Mankind was the epitome of God's handiwork on earth. They have smudged their bodies by being disobedient. This has caused God to become indignant at us. If you think that moral cleanliness is not closely connected with physical cleanliness, you have not learned anything from modern advances in science. Clearly, the moral laws and guidelines of the scripture, the Old Testament namely, are very much intended to keep us physically clean, however microscopic that cleanliness may be. And as one who sees every detail, even at the microscopic level, any form of defilement, no matter how infinitesimal, is still of the utmost importance to the Almighty, because He is a perfectionist. Just like an artist who cares about even the tiniest little defect in his artwork, car, painting, music, etc. In fact, the greater the artist's interest and pride in his work, the greater his frustration in the slightest defect inflicted by others upon his artwork would be, even if that defect is caused by the artwork itself. It doesn't matter how you look right now. Strive always to look good. It doesn't matter if you feel like you're not that attractive. Strive always to look good. Strive always to look your best. And don't do it half-heartedly, because to do it half-heartedly means you would try to look good outwardly, but you won't take care of your health. You won't eat properly. You won't eat cleanly. Then inwardly, you will still be defiled. And believe it or not, it will still some way affect your outer appearance. It starts from within. So ironically, even though God has made physical beauty like what seems to be most important, like in the eyes of humanity, a person becomes physically beautiful mostly based off of how they treat themselves inwardly anyway. So even though it seems like a shallow thing, it really is not, the more you think about it. So no matter how you look, always strive to look good so that God will be pleased with you. Because to look good means to care about what He has given you, and to keep it clean and healthy and to maintain it means that you care about what He has given you. To do otherwise is to view what God has given you as something contemptible, and you definitely don't want to do that. Psalms 27 verse 4 states from David, he said, "One thing I ask from the Lord, this only I do seek, that I may dwell in the house of Jehovah all the days of my life, to gaze upon the beauty of Jehovah and to seek Him in His temple." But did you catch what he said? to gaze upon the beauty of Jehovah. Jehovah is beautiful. We learn about God from the things he's made on earth. If he's put such strong emphasis on physical beauty, don't you think he himself is also beautiful? Now, is it wrong for us to care about the looks of God? Of course not, because his physical appearance matters just as much as his inner appearance, even though we could never ever see him. But you get the point. Everyone, and I mean everyone, loves to look upon beauty, even if that beauty is not a person. But we especially love to gaze upon a beautiful person. Men to women, women to men, right? Even women appreciate other beautiful women. But who made it so that beauty mattered that much? I hope you don't think Satan created beauty. And I hope you don't think that it's because of the fall of humanity that beauty is so captivating. Of course not. God made beauty to be that important. Sin came into the world because of extreme beauty. Adam sinned because of his beautiful wife. He was so captivated by her beauty that it caused Adam to love Eve more than he loved God. Because so here we see that God put so much emphasis on the physical beauty of Eve, and the inner beauty of Eve was up to Eve to manifest, to create. God made the physical beauty of Eve, but the inner beauty of Eve, God did not make it, because if God made it, it would have also been beautiful. He gave Eve free will, and with her free will, she was not beautiful inside. God emphasized the physical beauty of Eve to the point where Adam fell because of her physicality. But that's a shallow thing. Why make Eve so beautiful if God didn't care about physical beauty? You see? So it is through extreme beauty that sin came into the world. Satan himself was also very beautiful. As a matter of fact, in the book of Ezekiel, God even said about Satan, your heart became proud on account of your beauty, and you corrupted your wisdom because of your splendor. Again, beauty. So I threw you to the earth, and I made you a spectacle before kings. So not only did Adam sin because of extreme beauty, but Satan himself also sinned because of extreme beauty. And the angels in heaven who came and slept with the daughters of men also sinned because of extreme beauty, because of the extreme beauty of women. This is how strong and potent the Almighty crowned such a shallow thing as beauty. So much so that it can be argued as a single cause of the fall of everyone. Well, of everyone who fell, because not everyone, because you still have Christ who didn't fall, and you have some angels in heaven who have not fallen, and you have the cherubim and the seraphim who have not fallen. But beauty is a shallow thing. Therefore, you can say that God is shallow, but in this way, not in a bad way. Again, like I said, I should have emphasized this in my previous video, but now you get my point. But now most people are not bad people. So if someone is genuinely a good person, but they are also very, very attractive, this is a good thing. And if God chooses a physically fit and beautiful person to represent him, and that person is a good person, then even better. Because God cares not only about the inner person being good, but also about the outer appearance being good. The physical universe is beautiful to God, and God saw that it was good. He made it to be beautiful. Adam and Eve and Satan were all very beautiful, including the angels that came down and slept with the daughters of men. They too were very beautiful, and so were the women whom they came down to sleep with. They were very beautiful. God saw that all he had made physically, shallowly, were all very good, God said. Well, some were good, and in the end, he said everything was very good. But many have let physical beauty corrupt them. So when God said that everything was good, you can almost argue that he was speaking about physical beauty. He wasn't speaking about inward beauty, right? So he was speaking shallowly about physicality. But he left the inner person and the deeper person, the most important person, you might say, to choose for themselves what they would be, because free will allows you to choose whether you'll be beautiful or ugly. But physically, you have what you already have, but you can do your best to look your best. And with God, your best is good enough. And if you ask him to, he can make your best be good enough where if it physically affects you, it manifests in the physical realm where it actually physically makes you more attractive. In the Bible, when someone was beautiful, it made sure to mention that fact. I'm gonna give you some examples. But why? Why was it so important for the Bible to mention if someone was beautiful? Like, who cares? That's a shallow thing. We shouldn't care because the inner person is all that matters, right? Why should their physical appearance matter? Isn't that a shallow thing to point out that a person is beautiful, or make it your aim to make sure that that point is known, right? But according to who is that a shallow thing? According to who? Is not God himself beautiful? Isn't it shallow to point out the beauty of God and marvel at his majestic appearance and descriptions? Who dare call the person who focuses on the physical beauty of him who made beauty in his world to be a very attractive and appealing thing shallow? In the Bible, when someone was beautiful, it made sure to mention that fact. Job's daughters, after his ordeal, he had 3 more daughters and sons, which the Bible does not mention their names, but it does mention the names of his daughters. And the reason why it mentions the names of his daughters after his ordeal, which God blessed him more after his ordeal than before his ordeal, the Bible made it its obligation to mention that Job's 3 daughters were the most beautiful. Not inwardly. They might have been, well, I'm pretty sure they weren't bad persons. But the Bible didn't really care about their inner personality. No, the Bible made sure to point out their physical beauty. Why didn't the Bible make sure to mention if they were good persons or not? Because I mean, it's the inner person that matters, right? No. The Bible made sure to emphasize as a blessing to Job from the Almighty himself after Job's ordeal. So God considers this a very great blessing, so much so that it points it out and mentions the names of his 3 daughters, but doesn't even mention the names of his sons. It says that his 3 daughters were the most beautiful in all the lands. The most beautiful, physically, shallowly, right? Why did the Bible feel a need to mention that Joseph was an exceptionally good-looking young man during the time of Potiphar and Potiphar's wife trying to sleep with Joseph? Why does it mention that David was a very handsome, ruggedy man? Why did it mention about Absalom and how from the crown of his head to the sole of his foot, there was not one defect in his flesh? And every year they would cut his hair and it weighed like a certain amount of like pounds because of like how like beautiful he was and how majestic he was and how he had no defect physically, shallowly, and how his younger sister Tamar was exceptionally beautiful. And Abishag, the one who comforted David in his old age when he couldn't stay warm at night, a beautiful girl in all of Israel, Abishag, and her exceptional beauty. Sarah, exceptionally beautiful. Rachel, the wife of Joseph, of Jacob, whom Jacob worked 14 years to get because she was so beautiful. Rebecca, the wife of Isaac, she was exceptionally beautiful. And then Leah was not that attractive, and the Bible mentioned it, that she wasn't that attractive. And Abigail, who was exceptionally beautiful. Who was Abigail? Abigail was the wife of Nabal, the bad man. who repaid good with bad. And David was going to kill him. But Abigail softened David's heart. And later on, God struck Nabal so that he died. And God gave Abigail to David to have as his wife. Abigail was exceptionally beautiful. The Bible made sure to mention that. Moses, we know as a baby, he was very beautiful in appearance. And that's why the woman in Egypt took pity on Moses. I believe it was the daughter of Pharaoh. I forget. Or was it it wasn't the wife of Pharaoh. I forget that part. But Moses was exceptionally beautiful. Daniel and his three companions, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. You may know them as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, but I don't call them by that name because those are paganized names. Those were names that the Babylonians gave them to convert them from their Hebraic names to Babylonian names. But understand that when you call them those names, you're giving glory and honor to the pagan deities of the Babylonians. No, I call them by, and Daniel himself even had a Babylonian name, Belteshazzar. But we don't call Daniel Belteshazzar because Belteshazzar also has a pagan meaning, which glorifies a pagan deity. So you wouldn't call Daniel Belteshazzar. So why would you call his three companions Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? No, call them by their Hebraic names, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Right? Now, Daniel and his three companions, they were exceptionally handsome young men and well fit physically. They were glorious in appearance. After the 10 days diet that they stuck to, which is the God of the Hebrews, which is the diet of the Hebrews. So God has a diet that he wants his people to follow because it will make them physically more attractive and healthier and stronger, thereby glorifying God, because God cares very much about our physical appearance. I'll keep emphasizing that. Because Daniel and his three companions stuck to the Hebraic diet, they looked 10 times better than the wise men of Nebuchadnezzar. Again, beauty is closely related to cleanliness, and cleanliness is closeness with God. It's crazy because when someone looks attractive, you automatically assume that they're healthy. You automatically assume that they must smell good, that they must be healthy. They're not dirty. They must be clean. Because even though that may not be true, you see how important physical appearance is, so much so that it makes people assume certain things about you. Now, how much more so if those things that they are assuming about you is true? You see how that glorifies God? But you see where it began though? It began with the physical appearance. That's how much power God gave physical appearances, physical beauty, physical traits. All of these things matter. So I think you all get the point. This is a pretty long video. I'm not sure many will watch it this far, but if you have, congratulations, I guess. Or no, not congratulations. If you have, thank you for watching. And I hope you get the point that God cares very much about the physical appearance of a person, even though he does care about the inner person as well. And so I want to end it off on this note that, yes, I should have clarified in my last video that God himself is not shallow, and he doesn't see in a shallow way only, but he also sees the inner person. But he himself is not shallow, but he does see shallowly as well as inwardly. Both fronts are important to him. So, but one of the best ways to get insight about a person's inner beauty is based on how they treat themselves externally. And so in my last video, I was emphasizing the point that if a person looks a certain way physically, yes, treat them how they treat themselves, because 9 times out of 10, if they look a certain way, is most likely because they treat themselves a certain way, meaning inwardly, they don't even care about their own physical appearance. They don't care about themselves. That's why they look the way they look, because they don't care about them. They don't take care of themselves inwardly, or they don't take care of themselves physically because inwardly they're not that, appealing. Therefore, treat them how they treat themselves so that they will get the message and step their game up. That was pretty much the message of that video in not so many words.